What's up, everybody? We wanted to take a quick moment to remind each of you to please like, share, comment, subscribe to the podcast. Tommy,
Ring that bell.
ring the bell. It goes a long way to support the podcast. Besides that, Tommy and I offer online coaching. The links for that will be below. The link for my merch store will be below as well. And without further ado, we bring to you a Thinking Man's podcast. A Thinking Man's podcast. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of A Thinking Man's podcast. This is episode 26. I'm your host. My name is Joseph PIRCHER, and with me, as always, my good friend Tommy Stiles. Tommy, what's going on, my friend?
A little bit of a milestone today. We're a half year in.
Half a year. Yes, sir.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy. It feels like we just started it. It also feels like we started it a lifetime ago. So, so today we are going to be wrapping up and putting a bow on the body part / training series that we've been doing. If you guys haven't checked that out so far, we have a leg, chest, and back series of videos up. Where we discuss different considerations around training. And so today we're gonna cap it off. We're gonna put together one episode with delts, arms. We're gonna touch on calves and forearms if we get to it. So yeah, let's just get rolling right into it. Especially off air, I sent Tommy a text when I knew that was the topic today. I said to him, okay, so we're doing delts and arms. I'll introduce the episode and then I'll just let you speak for an hour straight. So that's pretty much what I'm going to do. I'm going to let Tommy kick this off and hopefully he talks for like 46 straight minutes because I have no delts or arms.
Yeah, delts has always been a responsive part for me. So one of I wouldn't call it a genetic strength, but it does grow with anything I do.
So does that mean I can call it a genetic strength for you?
If you want, I mean, if you want to title it that way. I will say I have learned a lot about training my delts over the years and what works and what doesn't. So that's kind of what I can get into. I think delts can handle more frequency through the week as far as my own experience. So rather than having one big day of delts with a lot of volume on that day, I'd rather have 2 days and take that total volume and cut it in half. And then you're able to recover better and you can have more intensity on each day. You're giving yourself 2 opportunities for growth versus just one. That's kind of like the higher frequency approach. As far as how I have it right now, I have 2 delt days in my 8-day training split. One is very low volume. It's 3 to 4 sets tops with some intensifiers. So like a sample delt day right now, I think I described it 2 weeks ago on a different podcast we did.
Tommy, you're doing this as a standalone day
with triceps.
Okay.
And we'll get into arms and how to pair those in after. But so delts for me, a sample delt day right now on a low volume day would be 1 set of dumbbell shoulder press. And with me, I don't necessarily do 90-degree pressing anymore. I'll use the adjustable bench and 1 click back so I can get my elbows more underneath me versus that 90. I just find that the bigger I've gotten, external rotation has always been an issue for me because of baseball, and it's not becoming easier as I get bigger. So the risk versus reward of the 90-degree military press just isn't there for me. I've had numerous like pinch feelings at the bottom of a press, either on a Smith or a barbell or a dumbbell. So I just don't really mess with it anymore. So 1 notch back kind of puts you at like a 75-degree angle. Yeah. I find you're more powerful because your body weight is more underneath the weight. So 1 set of that, 6 to 8 reps. And then I'll move on to a dumbbell lateral. With that, it's going to be one all out set of 8 to 10. And then once you can't do a full rep, you go into half partial reps, and then you go into like quarters. You're just basically until you can't move the weight anymore. One set until you're done. From there, I go into a single arm cable lateral. And with those, I mean, real precise with the form. Everything needs to be locked in other than the working arm. If you watch how Dorian did them, that's very much my inspiration for how I train with the single arm laterals.
So what's the setup? Where is the cable set up? Where is it in relation to your body? Are you going in front of you, behind you? Because people are going to hear this, and there's a million different ways you could do just a single exercise. Like if I just said do a cable lateral, you might get a million different interpretations of it. So how is your setup look?
That's a good point. I do mine on if your gym has one of those free motion with the adjustable arms that can go all the way out or all the way in. I prefer those. Usually the cable stacks have smaller jumps. So on like an 8 stack or a 4 stack cable apparatus that you see in most commercial gyms, the plates jump like 12 to 15 pounds. So after, 2 sessions, you're going to be tapped out weight wise.
Yeah.
The free motion ones usually have smaller jumps. Sometimes the one I use at Muscle Factory has 2.5 pound jumps. So it's built for progressive overload. So I do it in front of me, and I won't set the height all the way down. I want the cable to be just below my hand as far as where it would line up. So I'm not having to reach across to go down too much. It's more comfortable here, and then you raise up and out to the side. I've noticed that maybe going 3 notches up from where the ground level is, or wherever that height would be for you. If you're shorter, you probably don't need to go that high. That just puts you in a better position to brace into your core and keep everything tight. Like I said, the only thing moving should be the working arm. And then with both dumbbell laterals and cable laterals, the cue I always give people, and laterals are one of the most bastardized movements in the gym, is think about lifting out to go up. If you think to go up, you're going to lift with the trap first, and you're just going to chicken wing it. You're going to get very little out of your medial delt. And with that, so if you think about like there's resistance coming down on your elbow and you're trying to lift through that by going out to go up, you'll get a lot more out of those movements. That's with any, side lateral, whether you're behind the back, in front, 1 arm, 2 arm, whatever. So that's the low volume day, 3 sets, engorged with blood. I train for strength. The volume day would look like a different, either a plate loaded shoulder press. We have a Body Masters one at the other gym I go to. I really like that one because it has the converging handles at the top. I use that and a Smith machine and as alternates. And with those, I have an idea of what like a 5 rep set would look like for me weight wise. So with that, I can kind of calculate out what 70 to 75% of that weight would be, and I'll do 3 sets of 8 to 10 with it. A lot quicker rest intervals than I'll take on a low volume day. From there, I'll go to a seated lateral machine, which I'm not sure the brand of the one I use. I carry in at Muscle Factory. And with those, I have to use the gym pin to add more weight. The stack only goes to 100. So with those, it's 3 sets of 10 to 12, quicker rest intervals.
And that's a movement you have. That's a movement you have on your Instagram pretty often. So as people hear this, if you want to see an example of it, a visual example, I know a lot of people are visual learners. Tommy does a good job of posting up a lot of his training on IG.
Yeah, you can see every movement I just said, you can see within it's pretty recent too. So, and then from there I just started adding in dumbbell shrugs again. Just as a way to get more upper back on delt day. It's also for function too. I'm trying to get more my scapula is very immobile naturally. So I'm trying to improve that through training as well as mobility work, cars and stuff like that. So one set of shrugs all out,
And
minimum
what
15
is that? Are you just upright? Are you standing? Are you seated?
standing. I use dumbbells or a plate loaded shrug machine. I don't do Smith or barbell anymore. The range of motion sucks and it ends up just straining my scalenes once I get too heavy, which defeats the purpose of why I'm doing the movement in the first place. So I prefer dumbbells because you can get a lot more range of motion. Minimum on that set is going to be 15 reps, but also I want to hold it for a long extended pause at the top for as many reps as I can, like a 2 count in my head. And then from there, I go to a reverse pec deck, or I'll do a prone lateral, a dumbbell lateral, which both those movements are on my Instagram too. I'll do a few sets of that. And then, so that's the shoulder volume day. So it's, it might not be high volume to someone else, but compared to what I do for low volume, it probably puts me at like 14 sets across the 8 days. So
Right on par with what makes sense with most body parts,
Yeah. And this is a good point too. If you have something, say you have 14 sets and the body part that you're training is responsive, I mean, why add more? At that point, you're just complicating it.
Well, and then you're gonna, it's a small body part, but then you're chipping away then at that recovery budget that we talked about all the time. It's like, why would I bother spending more on this when I have plenty of Delt already? It's like minimum effective dose, right? With anything, drugs, food, training, minimum effective dose.
If anything, it's so responsive that I could probably taper it down.
I was gonna say you could probably get away with less.
Yeah. It just depends. As long as I don't, for me, my chest is my biggest focus up top. So as long as performance is still improving there, I can leave all the other volume the same.
Yeah.
I did lower my back volume quite a bit. It's just one day every 8 days. So there has been other sacrifices made. And I feel that even though my delts are a strong body part, continuing to make them stronger can help the overall flow of my physique.
Absolutely.
Because like we've talked, like I'm not a shape guy. I don't have pretty structure. So knowing that, and this kind of, we talked about this on a different episode, is, it's a combination of everything: size, condition, structure, shape, presentation. That's like one. My natural genetic shape is ugly. So I have to compensate for that by my training choices and my movement selection. Obviously, the goal is to get big as fuck. That's been the goal since I was 17, but it can't just be like get big at all costs and not pay any attention to your shape. Or
like you can't just blindly just pack it on.
Yeah. So knowing I don't have the tightest waist, I'll take as much delt to delt with as I can get in my front shots. Even though delts are a super strong body part, like I need them to overcompensate and be stronger because I have weaknesses in other parts of my physique. So for the younger listeners listening to that, you don't need to think like that. You need to build your foundation. I didn't start thinking like that until this year, probably. And you can even attest to it because we've had some discussions off air and texting and stuff. Like I was always just about size. I don't give a shit about anything else. And then once I finally started to see my physique, and you can kind of see where things are coming in, and it takes years to do that, to be able to have that that visual. Then it was like, okay, the waist is what it is. So you need to get wider up top. You need more quad sweep. You need bigger adductors to push the legs out. Like there's all these little things that come into it. But for the younger people who haven't added 15 to 20 pounds of stage weight, or who are under 5 to 7 years of true training experience, just focus on strength and performance. Don't worry about weaknesses and strong, like
because you don't really know what is weak yet. What is actually weak? And then you don't know, you have to spend that 5 to 7 years just hammering away evenly at everything. And then at about that time, at about the 5 to 7 year mark, your body will tell you, okay, my legs and my legs and my back respond great. okay, that means I could probably start to dial those back. And then these other body parts, I start to fill in the blanks with more working volume there. So yeah, that's awesome to hear all that and hear the evolution of it and the thought process of it. I didn't mean to cut you off. What else did you have on there?
That as far as delts, that's it for my training.
Okay.
It's delts isn't like this exotic, you find 3, 4, 5 movements that work for you and just like we talked about with everything, just till the wheels fall off.
Yeah.
I do feel that you can push strength like delts, even though it's a smaller body part, you should still push strength. With your pressing, I mean, if you're someone who you could be the opposite of me, super big, full barrel chest and small delts. If that's your case, then you probably need to do less chest pressing and more delt pressing or lateral movements, whatever the case may be.
And you'd probably want to adjust. You'd probably want to adjust your angles from which you press then. You know what I mean? Like if you are one of these people, let's just say you'd have a barrel chest and then like your upper shelf, like your upper pec, front delt and delts are more weak. You probably want to do most of your pressing from a pretty upright angle as opposed to something more flat or decline. So that's kind of the thinking with that.
Yeah. So do you have anything to add on delts? I think it's good to hear from someone who's working to make a weak point a strong point.
I do. Yeah. I mean, and I think like you, my training has really undergone quite the evolution over the last, I would say 18 to 24 months or something like that. So to be honest, like I always tracked my training as far as performance, but I didn't do a good job of providing enough stimulus. And I think we've talked about this about different body parts, and it just seemed to be the case for my upper body in general, because I love the Dorian approach, like low volume, just fucking smash yourself on a set and then move on. And part of why I was blind to that not working for my upper body was because it worked for my legs. I haven't done more than 5 working sets for quads in probably 5 years, and they just continue to grow. So I saw that and I'm like, oh, this is how I need to train everything. And it turns out that's not necessarily the case. So, I've done it all. Like you spend enough time in this game, you try everything. I've done push pull legs. I've done bro split. I've done designer splits where it's like, specifically towards delts and arms. And that's kind of where I'm at now. So I'll talk to how I got to that. The bro split for shoulders, it feels like you're really doing something. Like you leave the gym and while you're in there, you should have a pretty wild pump if you're doing like, 10 to 14, 16 sets of delts in one session. But like you said, how high is the quality then? And how well are you recovering? All these things. So I think it unequivocally makes sense to spread that volume out for some of these. Like we're going to get to arms later, and I have a similar approach to arms as well, because they can recover pretty quickly because you're not exposing it to like some massive amount of load or stress. So I've kind of fallen into a groove where the general setup of my training at this point, and it has been for a bit with some small variations, but it's 2 push sessions, 2 pull sessions, and then just 1 leg day. And then depending on what I'm prioritizing within that training block, I'm going to slap some volume for whatever that body part is just somewhere else. So for example, like I've had blocks where I'm really prioritizing side delts, and I'll do 8 working sets of side delts on both push days. So that's 16 for the week. And then I might do another 4 or 5, either at the start of legs or at the end of pull, something like that, where I was trying to push into some of the really high end volumes for delts just to see what type of response that I would get. And I've had some good success, I think, both with delts and arms. having that like as a clear priority. Like these are a clear priority amongst the rest of the body parts that I'm doing. And I've had good return on it. Now, about a year from now, we'll see what the actual result was on stage when I'm peeled. But even recently coming out of like a mini cut where like you start to see what the new shape might look like, I think there's some good returns on it. So right now I'm in a block where it's what I said, 2 push sessions. And right now it's 6 working sets for side laterals in each. And then I will have a press at the beginning of that push session. So I'll do like the laterals first, because it's like that's a huge priority. I need my delts to look more capped. So I'm doing that first. That's my biggest priority. And then I will go to a shoulder press because it's not going to compromise my pressing performance at all. And if anything, it might help with kind of the mental connection. There's not a ton of carryover, but it sometimes it helps. And then so I'll probably just do like 2 sets on a press. And for me, I have found like you said, I don't love fixed like barbell or Smith at this point. And even most plate loaded machines, if they are like super externally rotated, they don't do well for me. I got to give, I've talked about it quite a bit, but the prime like 3 loaded shoulder press is probably the best that I've been on. But really, if I can, I'm going to try to seek out gyms that have some type of closer to neutral shoulder press, because it just lines up the front delt better. And then like you said, you made that point about coming back to 75 degrees as opposed to 90 degrees. Same thing. I think that positioning, like if you look at yourself from the side, it winds up lining out the front delt. So you're almost pressing up, but almost a little bit out in front of you, as opposed to like so upright that you're almost behind you. Like you talked about, I have had major shoulder impingement issues from trying to force myself into a completely upright position, pressing overhead. And then so as far as rear delts, those will go at the end of my pull sessions along with traps, because it just feels like it all kind of ties in. And so, yeah, same, no, like you said, nothing sexy or groundbreaking as far as like movement selection. I have one day that I do a reverse pec deck, and I have one day that I do, like a prone on an incline bench, like the Meadows rear delt swings. And I know Dusty has made a big name for those as well, where it's like, I'm going to grab 30 or 40 pound dumbbells and I'm going to try to move it 25 or 30 times with my rear delts. The last time that I remember looking at this information, the rear delts are, and not to get like in the weeds on this stuff, but they are predominantly slow twitch. So it's like they respond well to almost like endurance type work, like big, longer, higher volume sets. Which shouldn't be so much of a consideration in your training, but it is something to think about when the percentage is really favored in one way, like it is for the rear delts. And then so as far as like my movement selection for side delts, I'm trying to, my thought process, especially with it being like a priority, I'm doing multiple sessions, it's pretty high volume. I'm trying to hit all ranges and like strength profiles basically. So I will have a day where I do a dumbbell lateral as like my main one, and it's like we know, because we're just working against gravity, that's going to overload it in the shortened position where most of the tension is up at the top here. And then later in the week, I have one where it's going to overload the lengthened. It's similar to what you were talking about, that free motion moving cable setup. I'll angle them both kind of towards each other, and I'll do both arms at the same time. And I actually will step way out ahead of it and grab the opposite cable. Like I'll grab the left cable with my right arm and pull it behind me, because then it sets me up kind of in this like catty corner. The scapular plane has gotten a lot of buzz online now. But it's almost like, instead of going directly out at the side where there's going to be a lot of trap, you're almost throwing it out and towards the front of you, almost at like 45-ish degree angle from the torso. And so on top of all the things that you mentioned about that setup, I think the big benefit is it's one of the few movements where you can get most of the load in the lengthened position, where like your delts are loaded or stretched under load. So when you're standing there, where am I setting this up? I'm thinking about when I stand tall and I'm going to be in my stance and I'm going to do a set in. I want the cable set up basically even with where my wrist is going to naturally hang, because my arm is the moment arm. And when the moment arm and the line of pull, which is just going to be the cable in this instance, are at 90 degrees, that's when tension is greatest. So if you think about that, it's right out of the bottom. And there's not a ton of movements that do that. Most of the seated lateral machines that work on a cam are kind of mid-range. And then like we talked about, dumbbells are going to be end range. So it's like, I need something that's going to work that early range, that lengthened range. So all of these things combined have definitely helped me bring my delts up. So if at any point in my career I get on stage and I have good delts, yeah, maybe I'm somebody that's worth listening to, because I really had to think through it and work through it over time. So yeah, I mean, that's everything that I could think of delts wise. And then arms, you were mentioning, so you pair your delts with tries. So let's talk through that. Let's talk through arms in general and how it fits within your setup.
Yeah, so actually this year, all of 2022, I've actually made, like, I have the photos to look like there's been progress in my arms, pretty significant in a lot of the shots. So
Yeah.
And that's why it's important to take pictures. But this is the lowest amount of volume I've done for arms in my life. Like, I always had, arm days or more volume when I was doing push pull legs habitually. So for me to make my greatest gains as far as size with the lowest amount of work, again, it's all individual. I'm not telling anyone like do it my way, but I'm just telling you what I've found after years of 20 set arm days and just flooding them out. It's I would love to go out to the bar after getting that pump and just feel myself. But
that's the worst time to go though. Side note, I'm a Jersey Shore guy, right? It's like that's always been the thing. It's like everybody goes and hits arms on Friday and then goes to the bar. I think that's the worst time to do it. You ever look at yourself or your arms 2 or 3 hours after you've trained them? They look smaller than when they started. I'd rather them just be at square one.
that is true.
I mean, unless you're hitting some push-ups and some fucking curls in the parking lot and then you're walking in. That's another story. I know plenty of cats that have done that.
Yeah, I heard Frank McGrath used to do forearm workouts before going out.
Wouldn't you?
Yeah, I would all day. But so as it stands right now, currently on my low volume delt day, I train triceps, and I train them pretty hard. So there's a distinguish for triceps and biceps. I do train triceps pretty heavy. But the movements I now use are different than the movements I've used in the past. I'm using a pronated cable pushdown or a supinated cable pushdown with both arms, as heavy as I can go with full range of motion. And I have really flexible triceps, so I can get that all the way up to here without my shoulders rolling forward, keeping my elbows pinned on my sides, and then really drive that, through the pad of your palm into the floor. So for triceps on that low volume day, it might look like a set of 8 to 10 with that the pronated push down, and then I may do a back down set depending on how I feel. If not, I'll jump into a one arm. This one's kind of tough to describe, but I face away from the stack. The rope and the attachment is here. Most of the times I don't use an attachment. I just let the little ball that's on the end of the cable be right here. And from there, I'm using this arm to stabilize. And then I'm this right here. That's all lateral head. And for me, I've wanted to improve the sweep of my tricep and the side shots. So I've really been I hate saying it because I'm going to follow it up with, if you're under 7 years of training, you just need arms. You don't need to focus on the heads. And that's my biggest stick with the younger people I talk to at muscle factories. They want to focus on the individual heads of the tricep or the bicep. And it's like, you have 15-inch arms, just train. At some point, yeah, if there's a lagging or you want to specify the movements,
Sure.
cool. But in the beginning,
you get some feedback from a judge on stage or something. Okay.
yeah. So I'll do a couple sets of that, 12 to 15. And with that one, I hold the contraction for a 2 count. I really want to stick that and flex the tricep. And that's what the low volume day looks like. High volume will look similar, just with more sets. The movements aren't really changing. I've found pretty much 3 movements that work for me. That's this year. In the past, I've done a ton of dead skulls, dumbbell skull crushers, close grip presses, a lot of different things. I'm not saying they didn't work, but for growing the tricep specifically, I've had to get more of doing what I'm doing now. But you have to remember, your triceps are involved in anything where you're pressing. So I think remembering that just because my direct work is low, I press 4 days a week. So there is stimulus on the triceps on those days. So when I think back of maybe why I wasn't growing, I was doing too much. I was doing all this pressing and all this tricep work, and I actually needed to. I'm not going to lower the pressing to do more tricep work. That doesn't make sense. So for me, the biggest takeaway was more quality reps and less overall work will lead to growth. Obviously, full range of motion, all that stuff. And then flipping over to biceps, I do forearms and a brachialis movement on my back day. So I like either a straight dumbbell hammer curl or with a cable, or I'll do a cross the body hammer, which I really like those. I think those really light up the whole front of the forearm into that tie-in. So I'll do a couple sets of those, 10 to 12. I'm very, very low volume with biceps on the day I do them. Just like with delts, like I would rather split the volume across the week. And, I would train biceps 2 sets or less 4 days of the week versus doing anything more on one day. You know what I mean? Like allocate that volume all across the week, because I have a good connection with my biceps. It takes me 1 set to have a full pump. So for me, after that, it's just flooding them. And if you can't even get a contraction because you're so pumped, it feels cool mentally, but I think at that point you've accomplished what you wanted to accomplish. Like, that was always my takeaway with standalone arm days, is that, yeah, the pump and I'm just flooded and I can't even bend my arm, but the growth wasn't being shown as the months went on with the pictures. So,
right.
And then on the delt volume day, I'll do a set of biceps, or I'll do a 1 bicep movement. And my favorite bicep movement to do now versus years past is a 2-arm cable curl on that free motion machine, facing away. So I set the cables so they're further out, wherever my arms can sit naturally to where my shoulders can be back. And then I curl from there. I'm in front of my hands, so I'm kind of curling from behind me. Yeah. But I'm not so far in front where my shoulder has to roll forward to get the weight up. And with biceps, for me, it is all about brutal negatives, super slow, super methodical. It's almost boring to train because it's so slow. But that's what's given me the greatest results. I will say you can, even if you're younger, you can learn where your bicep attaches. There's no point to go lower than the attachment. So if my bicep connects down here, I can get all the way to here on the eccentric of a movement. If I have a short head and it only connects to here, or I've had a bicep tear, I probably don't need to go that far because the muscle's already stretched once I'm to like here. So it may look like you're doing a half rep to those around you, but if you know where your attachments are, you're training full range of motion for you individually. That's something I always point out to clients online and in person, is that, your genetic insertions, that is what it is. Like you can't, you got what you got. So train full range of motion, but make sure you train full range of motion for you. And that's just a little point I wanted to make about biceps. But on that day where I do that 2-arm curl, I'll do 3 to 4 sets. I opt for lower weights. I don't really push strength on biceps anymore. I will try to progress, but there's just a certain load that I'm going to get to that I'm not going to try to go higher. I'll just find a new way to create progression, pauses, holds, whatever, change the movement. I got beat up with tendonitis over the years. And then just like with triceps, you're getting direct work with pressing. On biceps, you're getting direct work with your rows and your pull downs, especially. I always do a supinated movement on pull day. So that's the bicep right there is being lit up in that movement alone. So, count your indirect work or factor it in when you're deciding how much direct work to actually give your arms. And that's the biggest takeaway has been I've needed less because of the amount of indirect work they get. And then I just really focus on the quality of everything.
Yeah. Yeah. So many good takeaways there. Like you said, I think arms are pretty simple. Like it's pretty much just like, just a single joint that just that just hinges. Like it's just this a lot over and over, bicep, tricep. So I'll go back and I'll go with triceps. So my arms need to be bigger, and I generally say just my arms need to be bigger. But looking at the arm itself, my triceps have always been good. And I think that's probably like when I look at it, it's like my chest has never been great. Shoulders have never been great. That probably tells me that a lot of times I was maybe taking too narrow of a grip in a lot of my pressing to where my triceps are doing a lot of the work. So at this point, biceps are a big priority. And then because of that, I'm scaling up volume on side delts. I'm scaling up volume on biceps. Triceps is one of those things that does get dialed back. So I have the 2 push days, and I'll just put a single movement at the end. But final movement will be a direct tricep movement, and it will be 4 sets. So across the week, it's 8 sets. And just 2 movements. So I'm just thinking about like I said before, the different ranges or working like shortened or lengthened. So one day of the week, I will do a cable press down that's more mid-range or shortened or contracted range. And then later in the week, I'm going to do something overhead, and it's similar to what you described, but I'm not going cross. I'm just going my tricep tendon will get a little bit beat up coming across like that. So I just set it literally right behind my ear. I set the cable right wherever I just naturally would reach back for a bow or whatever, mental cue you want to think of right there. That's where I set it. And then that's the plane that I'm going to work in. And like you said, with your arms, like with biceps, triceps for me, like on warm up set 1, I walk away and like my triceps feel like they're going to rip in half, blown up, pumped. So it doesn't take a whole lot. I think especially now with me, I mean, like you said, the goal has always just been be as big as possible, be as developed everywhere as possible, be as complete as possible. But I almost feel a greater sense of urgency to have blown up arms doing classic, where it's like it makes everything else like, the front double is such a big shot in classic, and you want to show like those big balloon arms and good lats, and then a little waist. So that's how I'm approaching triceps right now. Like you said, I've done everything. Man, and I've done a good job of just beating the shit out of my elbows and my connective tissue. It's funny that you mentioned before the dead skulls. Again, I'll reference Dusty. Man, I was just always just such a big fan of Dusty, and he always had just wild triceps. And so I kind of just would do whatever he was doing. And for a while there, it was dead stop skulls. And man, did I beat the fuck out of my elbows doing those, man. Like, especially when you're progressing loads up, because you can move some load. Like a lot of dead stop moves, you can really move some load. And it's a fun movement to do. Like that's a fun kind of just brute strength movement to do. You
Yeah.
feel like you're really doing something. But man, did I beat the
man
fuck.
shit.
Yeah, that is man shit. But man, those elbows take a beating. So I've pretty much exclusively, and this is the case now that I think about it, a recurring theme with all the little body parts that I'm really trying to improve, side delts, biceps, triceps. I pretty much exclusively do single arm setups at this point. Now I may do both at the same time, but it will be with individual forces of tension, like whether it's dumbbells or two individual cables, whatever. Or a lot of times with arms, I so badly want to elevate the quality of the work that I am going to do that I mostly am just doing one arm at a time and just like pouring every ounce of focus that I have into that one arm, take a break, and then do it on the other side. And I've was always someone, I would blame genetics, I would blame this, I would blame that. Man, my forearms, my wrists, my elbows, all the stuff. I moved to basically exclusively single arm stuff. All of a sudden, nothing hurts anymore. Everything's healthy, everything feels great. So I
Great
think
point.
just setup and alignment is a big one because it might be tough here for me on screen, but like even in the example of a curl, if everybody wants to do barbell curls, right? Arnold did barbell curls again, like that feels like it's like some man shit. But for me and for a lot of us, like where are you going to set up? Like if I just let my arms here at the side, you see it, I kind of have this like pronated, almost cross body angle to my arms. It's not like I'm perfectly externally rotated where everything's lined up. So you get a lot of this sheer force on the joint instead of the muscle itself. So I've made it a point to just try to line things up. Um, Bicep work, as far as movements, I'm kind of throwing the kitchen sink at it right now because I'm doing so much. So
Yeah.
there needs to be a variety, but also I think it makes sense. If you have that much volume to play with, it's like, all right, well, I want a little bit of a taste of everything so that I don't necessarily feel like I missed something. So I'll have I'll typically just have 3 or 4 working sets per movement for bicep, and that might be the only bicep movement of the day. Like you said, instead of doing 20 sets in one day, I may do 4 sets 5 days a week. There's a good chance that like right now I'm pretty much doing a movement for biceps every time I step foot in the gym. And it's like, okay, that's no problem. I'm going to come back and recover. And because I am working in a variety, I try to make it so that there's not a ton of carryover on the days that are back to back. So it's not like I'm going to do a hammer curl as my movement Monday and then come back Tuesday and do like a reverse curl or something where it's like basically the same movement. I'm trying to create some variety across the week. So I always am going to have a, supinated dumbbell curl. I'm always going to have a hammer dumbbell curl, and I'm going single arm. Like I will just do one arm at a time, but I'm doing it in that cross body plane that you talked about earlier. I'm a big believer in that. Funny enough, when I started training, I did a ton of volume and I trained my arms heavy. Like everybody, I was like, man, I want big arms. And they grew. They responded. And that was like the first thing that people would notice on me, like that hadn't seen me in a bit or whatever. It's like, man, your arms really grew. And then because I wanted to compete and I felt like I was underdoing the big stuff, like back, chest, legs, I went to more of a push pull legs and got away from prioritizing my arms for years. And then that's, all of a sudden one day you look up and they're a weakness and it's like, oh shit, I really need to prioritize them again. But I have seen recently, I've gotten back to training them. I don't want to say training them heavy because like you said, you can beat your arms up trying to just force load progressions. Um, so I have to be careful about how I word this, but I've gotten back to trying to fail in lower rep ranges for arms. Now that doesn't mean I'm going in and slinging around a 70-pound dumbbell. It just means whatever load I've chosen to use, I'm setting my training up and working within parameters that make it so that I'm going to fail like 6 to 8. And so what does that mean? It's if load isn't the reasoning for that. A lot of times it's just tempo. Like you said, I'll do like obnoxiously slow tempo with arms, and it might only take a 25 or a 30 on a supinated dumbbell curl. But if I go super, super slow, squeeze with everything I have at the top, and then obnoxiously slow negative, I might only get 6 or 8. And it's like, okay, that's kind of what I was after, but I'm also maintaining my joint health. So that's been a good move for me. And then similar to how I was explaining that like cable wrist height, lengthened lateral, I will have a bicep movement that's the same, because again, not a ton of movements are working the arms or the bicep in the lengthened. So I'll set that up at basically my wrist height, or maybe even one below. So like you said, like 2 notches up from the ground, and my back will be to the cable stack. So I'm pulling the cable out and then walking forward with it. And what I try to do is similar to that like cable row that we've talked about. I'm turning and like leaning over as I need to. That way I can assure the shoulder, the elbow, and the wrist are all lined up. I'm way torqued and turned so that I'm externally rotated, because external rotation and supination kind of go hand in hand. They're part of each other. So that's why I try to do everything single arm as opposed to forcing something, doing both at the same time. And so, yeah, I think I have seen some good returns. My arms are taping a good bit bigger than where I was like at this level of like lean and body weight. This time, like it would have been 2 years ago because of my timeline, but yeah, so that's everything. And then, like you said, I'll do some forearm work as well. Usually it depends. There's times I'll do some of the forearm work. Like if I'm only doing supinated work for biceps, I will do like some like brachial radialis work, because there's
Mhm.
not carryover. Now the days that I'm doing hammer curls or something specific to that won't have any forearm work, because it's kind of already baked into it. But um yeah, and then I'm also doing forearm work right now at home on my rest days. I'll do my cardio in the morning. I have a treadmill here at the house, and then I just bought some stuff to do forearms. Like I have like the rope that has a dumbbell at the bottom of it, or not a dumbbell, but a plate. So yeah, hoping to see some improvements top to bottom in the arms. Um, what are we missing anything? Or anything that you touched on that I skipped out within my own programming? I get caught in the weeds as I talk through all this stuff.
No, I mean, the movements are you hang out on Instagram long enough, you can find a different arm workout for every day of the week, and it's just really not that complex. I think, like you said, we've done it all because training arms can be fun. It's very bro. It's very like not.
Yeah,
There's no CNS involvement. You
right.
can be bullshitting with your buddies while you're pumping out sets of curls. So there's
Plus,
so
you're
many
walking
different
around with a
variations.
fucking sick pump, dude. It's awesome.
Yeah, but you don't need a ton of movements, honestly.
Yeah,
You made a
and
good
I
point
think
about
once.
the
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, yeah.
unilateral stuff.
Yes.
I have not done a two armed anything all of 2022. Everything's one, whether I'm
Yeah.
on a machine, a dumbbell, a cable, everything is unilateral because I have, and everyone has imbalances. So you just want to put yourself in a position to counter the imbalance.
Yeah.
So for me, the external rotation on the left side is worse than the right. So I have to pivot how I set up to be able to keep my elbow tight to my body. Guys with tight shoulders, tight pecs, tight bicep tendons that get that rolled forward look. You're going to want to, not only for development, but for overall function, you're going to want to do like that 2-arm cable curl I was mentioning, an incline dumbbell curl, movements that get you here so you
Yeah.
can fix that that issue that you're having. You might put longevity back into your career and maybe avoid a tear or something serious by using training as a way to increase mobility. we talk about mobility a lot. I have this conversation with all my clients. Like they're always like, how do I warm up? How do I improve mobility? Like there's no black and white, but through enough training videos, I can kind of see like, okay, this is where you're deficient. So let's add this movement in to help improve overall mobility. So biggest thing I've learned is the movement selection can not only help with physique development, but it can also help with improving mobility over time as you do them.
Which that goes hand in hand. Once mobility improves and you gain access to some of these different end ranges, your physique is going to improve as well. So it just works hand in hand.
I haven't done a preacher curl on a preacher bench in a year because for me, that head of my bicep is more developed than the inner, and I have protracted shoulders. I have that baseball player gorilla bench press look where, natural anatomical position is standing facing forward with your palms completely rotated out like this. If you can't do that, and which most of us can't, we're working at computers, we're hunched over,
sure,
we train, all these different things. You need to be doing movements that put you back into that position to get full recruitment of all the bicep fibers.
Yeah. And John has always made a good point to me too, because, and it's a point that you just made, and I just want to hammer it home a little bit. Like, yeah, I think there is a benefit to tissue work and chiropractic and all those things. There's definitely a benefit. And especially if it's not limiting you in terms of budget or anything, absolutely give yourself every resource that you can to be your best. But you cannot manually manipulate tissue. Training teaches tissue how to function. So that should be the basis of your functional or mobility work. It just comes down to training it and teaching your tissue and your frame to be in the correct positions and fire in the correct positions. So just wanted to reiterate that because it's a great point. People think that there's some elaborate fucking band or YouTube fucking series on all this shit, and cars and all that stuff are great. They absolutely have made a huge difference in my upper body training.
Dude,
but it's really about it's really just about getting into correct positioning while you're training.
Yeah. And I will say, like, if you're someone who's I have paid for body work for 4 years straight, and I will continue to because I can fit it in my budget, and I've noticed the improvements and what it's helped me with. For someone that's more budget tight, YouTube, every single joint has a car on there that you can find 55,000 videos for. Watch them, study, use your eyes, use YouTube, and go to work. I do shoulder cars, 2 shoulder cars before all my pressing days for each arm. And I had gotten away from them because I was doing some other shit. And then I just got back to them, and training performance has skyrocketed with my pressing, and I'm pain free. So that
I was going to say, you're probably getting more out of, even performance aside, like you're probably getting more of a neural connection with everything because everything's firing.
Yeah. I mean, you have to open up the joints as much as you have to open up the tissues. You're only going to be able to pack on as much tissue as you have joint space for movement. So if you have a joint that's only operating at 50%, that joint is compromised, and you might run into some issues down the line, shoulder replacement, knee replacement, all these things. But also you can only put on 50% of the tissue you could put on because of that restriction. So, but yeah, cars is a great thing. I'm glad you mentioned that. I have everyone, I'm just telling them, like, YouTube, man, you got to just play around with this stuff. It's your body.
Like you said, it's every joint too. We're talking about like exclusively upper body stuff, but all my clients know I have hip cars programmed. Yeah. Prior to training anything legs. So awesome thing, because you're just teaching your joints to stabilize and create output at every possible angle. You put your shoulder through, I'm creating this like a lot of cross body tension here, and it's like every inch of the movement, every inch of range of motion for my shoulder has been taught to stabilize itself there and create force and output in that position. So then when I get under, under some dumbbells or a machine to press at 75 degrees for my delts, we've been there before. We know how to create force in this position. And so you'll just get a lot more out of your training, and it absolutely then will correlate to your physique. So all good stuff. I think we're rolling up on an hour, and I don't know how much
I think we got
else
like
you have.
6 or 7 minutes.
Yeah, that's
but
all right. These people aren't paying us.
they I wanted to see if you had any, like, we talked about what we're doing, and I thought about this as you were talking. Anything you're doing with clients that may be different than what we're doing as far as program considerations. So, like, I program for Lyric. Her delts are a weaker body part, so that has meant that I've gotten outside. I wouldn't tell her, or I wouldn't program for her what I'm doing. I would do
Right,
things
of course.
differently. And so for her at different points of the year, I had days she was doing some sort of delts on top of her delt day, 3 additional days. So it was like 4 days.
Yeah.
It was almost delts every other day, but just
Yep.
lower volume on each day. Biceps, delts, I feel like all, and triceps to a degree. I feel like they all can recover relatively quickly. So
I
if
would
you
add
needed to,
traps to that too. So it seems like all these like upper body, upper shelf, smaller muscle groups, they can kind of take a beating in terms of like, per session volume, but then also their ability to recover and come back and do them a day or two later I mean, when was the last time that anybody listened to this had their side delt sore? I don't, maybe it's just because mine stink, but my side delt specifically are never sore. And my arms are very, very rarely sore. It takes a pretty high level of like novel stimulus, meaning like some type of new movement or setup to get me sore. And then that's mostly that is in part due to the frequency as well, the repeated bout effect. You expose your body to some type of stress or stimulus consistently and quickly, your body knows, hey, we need to gear up and be ready to do this again tomorrow. But as far as programming, it's all the same framework of what I was talking about that I'm doing with myself, just depending on that client. Like if somebody needs arms, they're going to be a priority. Like, I can think I have a couple of guys that, we wanted to elevate the quality of the arm work, but we also need to do legs twice a week. And it's like, okay, now you have 2 days where it's biceps and legs, and you go in and do
I did biceps and legs for years.
Yeah, you go in and do 4 or 6 excellent high quality sets of biceps, and then you go in and do the leg work that you need to. You're completely unaffected for legs. CNS is completely unaffected. And then it kind of allows you to organize your volume in a better spot for the rest of the week too. I like that setup a lot. That's one that I'm sure a handful of my clients listening are probably like, hey, he did that for me too. It's just a good setup. It's just a good way to organize things, especially if your physique calls for that. Now, I think with some considerations I have ran into, I did, even saying that my triceps were like, better comparatively than my biceps. I have run a block or two where I tried to push that volume up for triceps, and then I ran into some issues where it would compromise my pressing. Like, let's say I wanted to really, really prioritize triceps, and because of that, I was stacking some of the volume, let's say at the end of a pull workout, and then the following day is push. You can run into some issues because now it's like you've just beat up your triceps directly, and then now you need them to go be a major stabilizer and a major contributor to your pressing as well. So those are something to think about. I haven't noticed that same issue in terms of the bicep with back work. I've never like had sore biceps and then it compromised my back training at all. So Yeah, as far as like programming, I think it just comes down to, like we said, context is king. And it's just, what are you prioritizing? And is this someone that even needs to be prioritizing specific body parts? Or does this person just need to go in and train and spend some time under the bar before we start talking about a really specialized split?
I agree with that. There's one thing that I've seen at least twice off the top of my head where someone has decent pressing, so they have decent front delts. Their side delts aren't a weakness, but it's actually the rear delt that is completely like flat from the rear, like it doesn't even pop at all. So with that person, I'm going to start their delt days or their whatever days with rear delts. You're fresh. I want you to hammer your rear delts and then go through the rest of the delt day.
Because that's not going to compromise anything, regardless
you
of
could
what.
also tack rear delt on, and I do this anyway with a lot of people with back day because it's part of the back. It's involved in a lot of the movements. I just change up. There's Dante has a thing called Dante rows where you're like a pronated grip and you're as wide as you can go to activate the rear delt. You pull those from the floor. Those pin loaded machines, they're like any brand, but it's made for back, like it's a mid back row, I think it's probably called. But take a couple of like pulley handles, put it on, and get your spacing set up, and then do a rear delt based row. And with those, just think of like your rear delts as two jugs of water, and you're trying to fill up that water with blood volume. It's just pump, put as much. And like you said earlier, rear delts and high reps. Like we were doing those DB swings with sets of 50. I mean, we were hammering our rear delts, and my rear delts are a very strong point of my back poses. So I think there is
side
merit.
Shots too, dude. You sent me that side. You sent me a side chest recently, like privately, and it just felt like your rear delt punched me in the face when I opened the photo. I was like, Jesus Christ.
I think there's merit to, like you said, it would be considered just overdoing the rear delt because I think it can handle a lot.
It can handle it.
Of stimulus. It's such a small range of motion that you're not exuding a ton of neural fatigue. It's just a matter of how much pain can you take via the pump. So
I did that for years. Actually, I did the bro split, and I had a shoulder specific day, and for a bit, like on bodybuilding.com and like the couple forums that we could get access to back in the day, luckily I came across a couple people. I don't know who to even give them credit, but just generally articles or whatever, where it's like, hey, most people have way overdeveloped front delts and way underdeveloped rear delts. Start your shoulder day with rear delts. And I was like, oh, okay, this sounds like a good idea. And then so my rear delts are pretty good. And then like my side delts and my front delts wound up being underdeveloped. So it's one of those things where take what I just said, take what we've said this whole time. It just comes down to what are you prioritizing? That tends to be what is going to grow within that phase or that block. So, we touched on everything body part wise, and a recurring theme was like, hey, if you need to improve this body part, make it a priority.
Yeah. And if you're not able to discern and do all this for yourself,
hire a coach.
There you go. Like there's the shameless plug.
I love it. And on that note, we'll leave it on that. Hire a good coach. You're looking at two of them right here. Links are below. For Tommy Stiles, I'm Joseph PIRCHER. This was the Thinking Man's podcast. Until next time, guys, we are out. A Thinking Man's podcast.